I showed you 2 films last night.
Yes, you did.
Pump Up the Volume.
We're getting into the good stuff.
And Me and Earl and the Dying Girl. Mm-hmm. I think Pump Up the Volume is an underrated classic. Let me give you some background about my experience with the film.
Okay.
I had never heard of it. 2007, I'm talking to a friend of mine. Believe we're on the bus in Denver, Colorado. Somehow we got on the subject of Christian Slater. He tells me Slater made this film in the early 90s called Pump Up the Volume. My friend says it's one of the best films of the last 60 years. It's up there with Gone with the Wind.
Really?
Which is high praise. I don't know.
That's really high.
I might not go that far, but it's very good.
I wouldn't go that far.
So in 2008, I found a copy of the film, maybe thanks to the good people at Damanoid. Watched it a couple times. Mm-hmm. Wanted an excuse to watch it again. Mm-hmm. We started dating, doing movie nights.
Yeah.
Last night, I was able to see it again with you.
Yeah.
Do you want to give an overview of the film, or do you want me to?
I will give you as much of an overview as possible. The basic premise is about this kid that is in Arizona. It's implied that he just moved to the neighborhood, and he has this underground radio station that all the kids are listening to, and his DJ name is Happy Harry Hard On, and you can kind of figure out what that would possibly mean. And he's the kind of kid that will say what's on his mind on the radio station, play some really good music, because the music in the movie was pretty good. But in real life, his name is Mark, and he's like completely shy, especially around pretty girls. He doesn't have anyone to talk to. He doesn't have a lot of friends. He eats his lunch by himself. He feels like an outcast. But on the radio station, he's the most confident guy ever. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes.
Okay. Go on, Mr. Hammond.
The show is very popular at the school. Pirate radio station, the signal isn't great. One of the reasons it's popular, besides for the fact that there's all the sexual talk, is because Mark talks a lot about the school and the administration.
It's great.
His dad does some sort of work with the school. So he... What are you doing, babes?
Oh, I'm looking for the teacher. Oh, here it is. Go on.
Okay. Well, we're distracting that you.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
That's okay. So he steals a lot of his dad's papers, finds out about the people working at the school. One night he calls up a guidance counselor and just like rips into him for having this girl kicked out because she was pregnant. Mm-hmm. Talks about the teachers. And he also gets mail from the students delivered to this post office box. He reads this poetry from this one girl, who we find out later is named Nora, but I think he calls her Poetry Girl at first. And he reads letters from the students. Sometimes he'll call them, sometimes he won't. He decides to contact this kid who says that he's thinking about committing suicide.
Malcolm Kaiser.
Calls him. Doesn't tell him not to do it, but is asking him questions about his life. Malcolm hangs up in the middle of the phone call. The next day, we find out that Mr. Kaiser killed himself.
Right.
Now people are starting to take more notice of this radio show.
Including the media.
Right, exactly. And there's some speculation that he might not broadcast ever again. He's thinking about that. Around this time, Nora figures out who he is.
Right.
Because she's been listening intently and listening to these little clues. Like he'll say that, I eat lunch alone at the stairwell. I chew this particular type of gum.
Yep.
Things of that nature.
Yep.
I just moved here.
Uh-huh.
She confronts him. She tells him, you don't have anything to worry about. You weren't the bad guy in this.
Right.
All that type of stuff.
And basically, because, I know who you are and your message is coming out.
Right.
Your message, everybody's listening to your message.
They call a big PTA meeting.
Yeah, this is an interesting scene.
Mark goes there. There's a huge ruckus. He tells his mom that he wants to rush home. So he says, you want to listen to that Happy Harry Hard-On character? And he says, I guess so, Ma.
I guess so. And meanwhile, his parents are so clueless.
They're old hippies, and we're going to get to that in a little while. Because I have some thoughts.
I do too.
Okay.
But
he goes home, isn't really going to broadcast. He's kind of up in the air about it. Nora shows up.
Yep.
He says, why don't you at least tell me to fuck off or get out of here? You're not even saying anything to me. He sits down, turns away from her, opens up the microphone, starts telling this story about this guy who can't communicate unless he's on the air.
Yeah, it's like, I can't talk. Yeah.
His parents come into the house late.
This is a great scene.
They decide to turn it on to listen to the radio show. Mm-hmm. And they hear Mark's voice.
And they're like, Mark, open the door.
They go down to the basement. He hides his equipment, opens the door. Kind of think that he's Happy Harry, but they can't prove it.
Yeah.
Then they see Nora, who gives them plausible deniability. We should also say, after the parents leave, I believe, I might be getting this a little bit wrong because of the tea tree oil distractions, but...
come on. Really?
He called up the guidance counselor again. Guidance counselor has the number traced. What he doesn't know is Mark somehow rigged this transmitter
yeah.
so that it'll send the foam signal someplace else in his neighborhood. So the police break into one of his neighbors' houses and find this weird transmitter.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Mark puts on a song, goes out, sees Nora in the backyard. Mm-hmm. They kind of get naked and are circling around each other and are laying on the ground. He had made references to wearing a cock ring before. So he says, is that really true? And he says, no, that's just something I read in a magazine. They hear the police. They look over and they see the police bringing this old couple back to their house where they thought
it's like, oh no, they're just dropping off my number. They're just dropping off my neighbor.
Right. Okay. Fast forward. And now the national media has taken interest in this. It's like a couple of days later. By this point, Nora and some other students have been called into the principal's office. One of the kids for selling tapes of the show. Yep. Nora because she's bad at math.
Yeah.
She tells the principal to fuck herself and is kicked out.
We didn't see the scene. We
saw them being called in, but we didn't see Nora.
We didn't see Nora pushing back against the principal.
This is what she tells to Mark.
Yeah.
One of Mark's favorite teacher who educates him on the subject of English is
English
fired.
Teacher, yes, is fired, yeah.
Yes.
Because she was the one who was asking questions to the principal, like, why did you do this?
Correct. Okay.
She was a whistleblower.
We find out that NBC plans to broadcast the Happy Harry Hard-On show. They're going to take the feed and air it. Right? Mm-hmm. So now we got the national media. There's this one spot in the neighborhood where you can really hear Mark's show well. Uh-huh. A bunch of kids go to that place. There's this huge party going on.
Yep.
They're not sure if he's going to go on the air. He shows Nora his mom's old Jeep. Yep. That has all this equipment.
All his equipment. And she's sitting in the passenger seat. Or the driver's seat.
Because by now the chairman of the FCC is out, and he says, we're going to track down him if he tries to broadcast tonight, and we're going to take this kid down. He thinks, well, if I could drive around, it's going to be harder for them to pick up the signal.
Right.
Comes on the air that night. Kids are happy. He's broadcasting. Nora's driving around the neighborhood. She drives off of the road and hits a few bumps.
Yep. And then lose transmission.
No. She disconnects his harmonizer.
That's right, the harmonizer.
So now he has to speak in his real voice.
Yep.
And at first, he's thinking, I can't do this. Then he decides to do it. Mm-hmm. He talks about how being a teenager is hard, but you got to do it so you can get through the rest of your life.
Right.
Starts talking how things can be better, but we all got to stand up, do our part, and be who you are.
Right.
That means saying fuck or sit 1,000 times, and that's what you got to do, but be you. And then the Jeep stops. Cops come over, take the two of them away. People are applauding.
I thought it was just him.
No, they take both of them away. He's an accomplice.
Oh, and he also mentioned that he's starting to come to a place of healing.
Right.
When he says that, he looks at Nora.
Exactly.
Right.
And the cops are about to put him in the police car. He looks at the crowd and he says, "Talk hard."
Yep.
It's taken away. Screen fades to black. And you hear all these amateur radio stations starting up across the country by young people who are speaking their truth. Mm-hmm. That's how the film ends.
That was a great way how it ended.
I think this is a classic film that not enough people remember today. The message is, be who you are, speak your truth.
And don't let anybody censor you no matter what the cost is.
Don't take any shit from anybody, J-Lo.
You said it, not me.
Right. What do you think about this film and what it says?
I honestly think that teens and adults should watch this because this is going on right now in our own country where people are canceling other people because they disagree with what they say. And I honestly think that we could learn a lot from Mark, aka Happy Harry.
It's happening on both sides too. Conservatives and liberals are busy canceling each other every single day.
It should be stopped. It really should be. I honestly think that there are some mainly liberal people that are speaking out and saying this isn't good. This isn't good for anybody. This isn't good for anybody, and we have to stop it before it completely. Well, it's already out of hand, but it may get worse if we don't stop it. And
there are some conservatives coming out against censorship, too.
Oh, there's a lot of them coming out against censorship. And I don't know, like thinking about that movie that we just saw, Pump Up the Volume, my question is, well, if you don't like it so much, what's wrong with changing the channel or looking the other way?
Going to another podcast.
Looking the other way. If you don't agree with them, that's fine. But there are like a million things to listen to, a million things to watch, and it doesn't have to be that everybody has to follow your protocol.
The idea of groupthink.
I can't stand groupthink.
Mark pushes back against that.
Right.
And he gives us the excuse as the audience to push back against that. Because there's like the audience, us watching the movie, but then there's the audience in the movie who are characters who learn how to push back. There's a girl in the movie who kind of sets her house on fire by putting metal into her microwave.
Yeah, that was I believe that was the popular girl, one of the popular girls.
There's this overweight kid who kind of gets accepted because he starts selling tapes of the show, which is this program that the administration doesn't want them to listen to.
Right.
There's Mark's teacher. Yeah, he's not Happy Harry to her, but she kind of learns to push back because of the students, I think.
Yep.
And steals files, gives them to Mark's father that shows that the principal is having students kicked out of the school.
I have to mention something that we forgot to mention.
Go ahead.
That while she was fired, this English teacher was fired, she was in the office with the principal and Mark's dad and the administration. And she was questioning the principal and saying, what about all these files where all these people were suspended for doing pretty much nothing to be suspended? Like Cheryl and, and she mentioned these people, and her only excuse is, well, they were troublemakers. And her father hears this, and he's already read, he had all the files, and he then suspends her, and she's like, you can't suspend me. And he says, I think I just did.
Okay.
So, I mean, we forgot to mention that, but
I think I just did. But
I think I just did.
No, I mean, I think I just did mention it. I just did it in a much more succinct way. But the point is, Mark teaches the people in the movie to fight back against the system. And he tells us, the real audience, that we need to fight it as well, in our own way.
Yeah.
Which I think good art questions the system that it's made in. Whether it's Pump Up the Volume, NWA, Howard Stern, Joe Rogan, good artists push back against the system.
Right.
What do you think about that?
I think it's true. We were seeing it in the 90s too with, I think it was the late 80s, early 90s with a rap group called 2 Live Crew. And I've heard a little bit of their stuff. I don't particularly like the group, but they were being censored.
Also with Charlton Heston and George H.W. Bush coming out against Ice-T and Body Count in the early 90s.
Yeah, I don't agree with anyone. I may not like that material. I don't listen to Ice-T much at all. I don't like that material, but that doesn't mean that I should make anybody else not like the material either. They have their own opinion about the material, and if they want to listen to it, I don't have to tell them, no, you can't listen to it. But why don't we talk about like the Family Research Council? Remember the ones that put stickers on albums, which I don't understand?
Led by Tipper Gore.
Yeah, I did not agree with that.
No,
I think it's a waste of time.
I agree with you, babe. But that fight has already been lost. I want to talk a little bit, though, about... We know what Mark says about speaking your truth. Mm-hmm. What does Mark say about the artist's life? Because he takes on this persona when he's expressing himself. Mm-hmm. But the rest of the time, he's a shy introvert.
Yeah.
I know a lot of artists like that, and I'm assuming you do as well.
Right. Yes.
Do you want to elaborate on that, J-Lo? Or do you want me to take the lead?
So, I'm not sure where I want to go with this, but I think it says a lot that the only place where some people feel comfortable in is whether they're on TV or whether they're on the radio, because...
Or stage,
right? They have this presence about them, and that's the only way that they can get their feelings out without feeling ridiculed.
Let me make it more personal than that.
Okay.
I first started performing poetry in 2003. Mm-hmm. I began writing a few years before then, but I became comfortable enough to go on stage in January of that year. And for many, many years, I think I was Happy Harry Hardon on stage, and I was Mark when I was off the stage, because I could do these incredible shows and then walk off stage having people think I was a complete extrovert, then being surprised when they would talk to me and I would be this total introvert.
But I think that's a misconception about introverts, though. Not every introvert is a shy person.
No, but I'm speaking in general terms. I'm speaking about myself as well.
Right.
And I'm saying I became a stronger person once I was able to merge Mark and Happy Harry. Mm-hmm. So the stage persona went down a little bit, became more centered, and the everyday version of myself became a little bit more outgoing.
Right.
But when you're first starting out in the artistic process, I think there's a huge duality between who you are when you're doing your art and how you behave when you're not performing. Mark represents that.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So does Nora to some extent.
Yes.
She's failing math, but she also volunteers at the library. Right,
exactly. Yeah.
She is a good student, just not in one subject.
Yes.
She's probably a good kid, but when she is around Christian Slater or listening to his radio program, she can be a little bit more of a rebel.
She's a different person. Yeah. Yep. I totally agree.
What do you think about his parents?
Oh, I have a lot to think about his parents. I find it very interesting. It just seems like they're kind of in their own world. They're not paying attention as to who. Maybe they start starting to figure out towards the end of the movie who he is, but they're clueless as to what Mark is doing with all that equipment. They know that he goes downstairs, but they don't know why. Sometimes he may be down there, they may think that he's down there doing his homework or reading or whatever, being by himself. They think that, maybe he would be better off if he went out and joined a bunch of programs at school, but they don't realize that that's not the kind of person he is. And he feels more comfortable being on the airwaves than interacting with people because he's not comfortable and he's trying to find his own voice.
Okay, that's not the take I would have had of his parents exactly.
But I think that they're clueless.
Let me tell you my opinion of Mark's parents. And we get a little bit of a glimpse of this early on in the film. Mm-hmm. Mark wraps up his first radio show that we know of, goes upstairs, grabs a beer. You overhear his parents talking and his dad saying, oh, something to the effect of, I used to be a hippie and now I'm working for the system.
That's right, yeah.
We also hear Mark at one point in the film say, everybody's a sellout. I'm a sellout. And my parents became sellouts when they decided to have me. My take is that they were outsiders. They were hippies. They questioned the system back in the 60s. They probably went to a good number of protests. But, you know, life goes on. They have a kid. They love their child. They have a good education. They decide to join the system.
Actually, you're right. I do remember them talking about that. Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So they join the system. So they represent what the system does to you. And it makes me wonder, they're never going to do a sequel to this movie because it's not popular enough.
But I don't think they should, honestly.
I'm up in the air about that. But if they did, would Mark be a sellout? Would he be like a famous radio host now, but who just does a standard show, and people listen to him based on his reputation and not what he's currently saying? And his kids would be the rebels.
Right.
So, like, they represent what the system does to you, and Mark represents the pushback of youth. Interesting.
So I didn't even think about that, but I know that they talked about the system, but I didn't even think of it that way. So you just enlightened me about that.
When they hear Mark on the radio, they know it's him.
They do. Well, eventually.
They do know it. No, they know it's him then.
Really?
This is my theory.
Okay.
When they see Nora, they're thrilled that he has a girl. Like, think of it. Most parents, when it's like past 10 at night and there's this girl over at your house,
they wouldn't want that. Yeah.
And she's hiding from the parents, they're not going to be like, oh, go ahead, get her, buddy. They want to believe that it's not him, and they want their son to be kind of rebellious too. His dad does what he can to push back against the system. When he finds out about the principal, he doesn't push it under the rug. He confronts it. They're good people who have been corrupted by the system. But they let Mark do the radio show and pretend that they don't know it's him.
Oh.
That's my theory.
Okay. And you might be right about that. I might be wrong about the other part, but yeah, that is interesting.
So this movie works on a lot of different levels.
Yeah.
Yes.
It is open to interpretation. Yes.
Yes. If it was made today, he would be a podcast host, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Can you imagine the Happy Harry podcast?
That would be great. I mean, something tells me that his dad was probably Happy Henry Hard-On back in the early 60s.
Happy Henry?
Yeah. And his mom was probably Happy Hannah Hard-On. That's how they met.
Or Haley.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
I'm so glad I got to show you this film. I hope you enjoyed it.
I did. Yes. I did.
Would you call it a classic?
I think so. I don't know that it would be so much up there with Gone with the Wind, and I haven't even seen it yet, but it's a good 90s classic, I think.
As far as teen films,
yeah,
it's in my top 3.
It's probably, yes, one of the best teen films I've seen in a long time.